Hello there, this is Steve here in Sydney on the Gnosis website truebluehealer.com, where in just 20 minutes you can get physical evidence in the beginner's tour, physical evidence of the activation of your divine spark, which is not just a legend, it's a real thing with physical evidence that it exists. Simply activating your divine spark will lead to vivid messaging dreams within a few days and ultimately an internal mentoring voice. And that's something that we're all supposed to be doing, but we're all distracted away from it with the head-spinning events around you provided by the media, terrorism, advertising, the military-industrial complex, big pharma, etc. So the idea is to keep your head spinning with all this fast-paced news bombarding you with information to stop you ever thinking about what you really are. And in fact, that's what all the great religions are about too, to distract you from your personal potential. But in just 20 minutes, you can get physical evidence that there's a lot more to you than you ever believed. It's very simple, very easy. Anyone who can join the dots and form their own personal opinions by reading a few bits of evidence, that's the ability you need. That's all you need, the ability to do that. So, having said that, I'll get on to today's subject, which is the mad world we live in and the ever-accelerating merry-go-round that they call reality, which I call an insane asylum. Other video makers like David Wood, who's a prolific producer of videos, he complains too about the world events occurring so rapidly, so many terrorist attacks, so many strange events going on in the world. He doesn't get time to think about them, doesn't get time to generate a video before another frightening event lands on his plate, attacks him from his screen, so to speak. So he's off balance too, and he's decided to use cut and paste formulaed videos, which is kind of clever and witty. But it does show how there's a formula to what's going on, and it's just coming out of the organised chaos that the media orchestrate. There is a useful turning point in Sydney mainstream media, the Daily Telegraph newspaper. There was, I think it was 10 international newspapers and leading news providers who said, even after the initially highly detailed description of the Rouen massacre, the priest being beheaded, 85 years old, and it being done by a convicted terrorist out on bail awaiting sentencing. He had an identification RF bracelet on him, and he screamed Allah Akbar and did some religious ceremony in Arabic around the Christian altar before forcing the priest to his knees to behead him. There were still 10 newspapers after that said, still, we have no known connection to terrorism. It beggars belief that so many so-called news outlets could do this. They could be so far disconnected from reality that it makes the journalists writing these pieces idiots. I don't care what they're doing, whether it's self-censorship or they're worried about what their newspaper proprietors want propagated. I don't think the newspaper proprietors know what they're doing either if they allow their journalists to write such garbage. But it certainly is working in favour of alternative media, because people are going to take less and less notice of what's in the mainstream media. And it's really good to see the Sydney Daily Telegraph taking on mainstream news providers around the world, calling them idiots, I suppose, just to get more readers. One has to be cynical where money's involved. You just have to be. I regret to say that. We seem to have a whole cluster of attacks bunching up statistically at the moment, yet they're absolutely all predicted by the Daesh monthly magazine, the ISIS monthly magazine. They tell people to do lone wolf attacks. A problem with some of these attacks is, though, that one thing you notice is that when these events occur, there's always someone strategically there to produce a camera from last century, to produce grainy film that's barely readable. I don't know why there's always somebody with a last century phone camera to take photos, videos of what's going on. So it seems to be a mix of what we're in at the moment is a mix of false flags and genuine lone wolf operations all mixed together. The end result is the same, it seems to be. The fact that a Mossad agent is identified and happens to be there with a last century camera producing grainy video twice in a row at two events is sort of a giveaway, isn't it? It really is a bit of a giveaway there. So you just got to laugh at, they want more and more terrorism. It's all part of the destruction of Europe. Desire to sow fear and panic into everybody. And then we've got, very strangely, or not strangely for the French intellectuals, one psychologist made a suggestion we should stop glorifying people in newspaper articles by printing their full name and details and photographs and everything. So it doesn't glorify ISIS, enable them to keep a really nice, attractive web-page scorecard. Well, I think they should have thought about that in 1967 when they started giving dramatic coverage to everything the Israelis did in the fake raid on Entebbe that became 3 movies, which was an inside job because Idi Amin left the airport lights on at midnight so the transport aircraft could land Israeli commandos. And did you know that Idi Amin was put into power by Israel? He was an Israeli puppet. You may not remember back that far, but he mysteriously had a friend in Israel. Surprise, surprise. Idi Amin had a friend in Israel that he used to ring up every day and get instructions, okay? And he used to report back what was happening. He was a very useful conduit to report back to Israel what was happening. And precisely why would a European plane be hijacked by Red Brigade communists, be hijacking Jewish people to Uganda? What a ludicrous intelligence operation that was, a ludicrous concept, if you want to put it that way. But it made worldwide headlines for weeks, and it became 3 whole movies. And press focused on every detail of it, and it's been like that ever since. And all of a sudden, when it's too late, because they realise they've been glorifying these people and all these, some of them obviously fake events. Some of the French intelligentsia, the newspaper proprietors, want to censor what they put in the newspapers to keep people in the dark about what's really going on, when the opposite is needed. What is needed is, in fact, education of the general public. And I've discovered by reading newspaper people writing into newspapers here in Sydney that the general readers know more about stuff than the columnists writing these newspapers. The general readers are informed, but not enough of the general readership is sufficiently informed. So my suggestion is that every time there's a terrorist attack and it's all over and somebody's been shot and there's bodies lying everywhere, you should be quoting the Quran in little passages, little panels, such as a famous phrase uttered by the Prophet, "I have been made victorious with terror." The Prophet said that because he only got 100 converts in 10 years of preaching in Mecca. He was run out of Mecca for ridiculing all the pagan rituals going on there. He went to Medina and scored 100,000 converts in just 3 years. And he found that the miracle new method, the turning point in his business plan, was beheading people in large numbers. Suddenly a lot of people began to agree with him. Isn't that a remarkable business plan? What a great idea. And he then proceeded, and him and his followers, to kill 260 million people, spreading the empire of Islam, and now it's pouring into Europe. Nothing's changed. That's got to be put into every newspaper article about terrorism. It's very easy to make a little panel saying, the Prophet said this, the Prophet said that. I'll put a panel here in this video. There'll be at the end. You can see the simple summary of Islam. You can get it down to 20 utterances from Muhammad. The different ways of killing people. That 65% of the Quran is devoted to punishing the unbelievers, and the punishments go from paying protection money to not be killed, up to having your hands and feet chopped off, to stabbing by sword, being sawn in half, or being decapitated. There's numerous. Boiling water is another weapon. I think acid gets a mention too. I've seen it in written about 1,000 years ago by a Spanish, another Islamic intellectual in Spain, who said, make sure you kill blind people and cripples as well. There can be no mercy. I think I can find that for you. I'll put it at the end of this video if I can. On the false flags, we seem to be watching a potpourri, a sort of smorgasbord of a mixture of lone wolves and false flag attacks. Because the one where the white truck hits more than 100 people, nobody's mentioned the fact that the front cowling of the truck is missing in all the photographs. So the front cowling of the truck, which is a large white panel, should be dented and scratched and damaged, and you'd expect it to be mildly bloodied at least. Yet no one was able to find the truck hood, the truck cowling, the front cover, and photograph it with all the damage to it. I mean, that'd be a kind of graphic, scary photo, wouldn't it? Why didn't anyone get that? It's kind of strange. It's hard to know what to make of it. And I did an experiment. The Mossad agent, who happened to be in the Westminster Hotel when the truck went past, I did an experiment with my flip phone. And imagine yourself, the description given is that you hear gunshots outside your hotel room, so you get your phone and immediately rush to the window to get closer to the gunshots. Now, I'm not certain that I would do that, but I could experiment with how long it takes to get a flip phone rolling, and that is, I've got to open my little case, I've got to turn the screen on with a side button, then I've got to wipe it with a finger, then I've got to wait for the menu to come up, then I've got to activate the camera. That all takes about 20 seconds. So the gunshots were a lot closer than 20 seconds to the truck going past the Westminster Hotel window, and so clearly the telephone must have been ready. The telephone camera must have been ready to catch the truck just after the gunshots. So it looks very much like a staged event, and I still don't know where the cowling on front of the truck went, and why isn't it in evidence? Why isn't it in photograph? Why do these people turn up with so many last century phone cameras that can barely produce recognisable detail? Why do so many bodies on the road look mysteriously like store dummies that I'm very familiar with? The way the arms rotate, and you actually see the rotating joints broken and legs in opposite positions, which is facilitated by them being store window dummies. So there's been a whole lot of dummies thrown down, made to make the scene look a whole lot worse. That's very, very strange to me. Why don't any of these events stack up with everything matching together like a jigsaw puzzle, as it should, if it were a genuine event? Who's always going to be standing there with a last century phone camera, for goodness sake? Where do you get a 20, 30-year-old phone from, still working? I mean, for goodness sake, it beggars belief, doesn't it? Further developments include the new British Prime Minister, who promised to lead Britain out of the EU. Has just said she's not going to do it now. She's changed her mind. She's going to wait till the Scottish population is on board with the idea of leaving the EU, which basically means she's abandoned the whole idea and forgotten about it, and she's hoping the British public will soon forget about it. Well, that just shows how neither political party has got the interests of the people at heart. And I can see suddenly a pattern to Nigel Farage, who unexpectedly resigned from politics as soon as he got the referendum up. I think he's waiting to be called in at the next election to become the next British Prime Minister. I think that might happen. He seems to be the only Conservative politician truly interested in exiting the EU. Now, it's not going to be forgotten, this Brexit thing, because a wonderful thing's happened. They cheated in Austria in the first presidential election. An immigrant won who's in favour of doubling migration by cheating. There's so much cheating, there's now a second Austrian election for the president's position, and Mr. Hofer has increased his lead in polls so that he's going to become president and then preside over governments which will be anxious to leave the EU. That means Austria could exit the EU before Britain. I'm very glad to see this development occurring because the terrorist attacks and the economic malaise going on in Europe and all the evil that's in the newspapers is only making people to say, let's get out of here. Let's get out of this dictatorial thing where soon we're going to lose even our national armies. We're going to lose our own armies, that our own citizens are going to be in a foreign army that controls us, for goodness sake. That's coming soon if you don't get out of the EU. Okay, so I'm hoping Nigel Farage will be available. I suspect he will be. And I'm pretty confident that Austria will be leaving the EU, possibly before Britain. But that will provide an impetus to remind the British people of how they've been betrayed by their own Conservative Prime Minister, Lisa May. But neither party can lead them. They need a new party, and a Brexit government is what Nigel Farage called it. A Brexit government is needed, and they still don't have one. But I think Austria is likely to provide the big, strong reminder in just a few weeks. So that's something to look forward to. The opera's not over till the fat lady sings, so to speak. And there are growing freedom movements in Germany. Who want to pull Germany out of the EU. Because it's becoming increasingly known to people that Angela Merkel's not actually German. She's a professional conspirator like so many other Jewish people. She, in her address to the Israeli parliament, she's been to Israel 4 times, she said she was finally glad to be able to speak her mother tongue, meaning, which is code for, I'm not German. I don't care what the hell happens to Germany. And she's actively trying to destroy Germany, which is a long-term plan adopted by the Jews based on the Kalergi plan of about 1920, okay? The Kudahov-Kalergi plan was a very strange plan to mix everyone in Europe together with Africans to produce a non-racial race where everyone looks the same and there will be no racial tension and people will be more easily governed or something. Kalergi was a sort of brilliant intellectual, or so he was told at school, so he thought he was brilliant. He could speak 6 or 7 languages, and his ancestry was very strange, very unusual. It was German and Japanese, and the German side of his family, he'd had ancestors who'd fled the French Revolution to live in Austria, aristocrats they had been, and a variety of other Greek and Danish relatives he had in his ancestry. So his mother was Japanese, and so he thought he was so wonderful because he was praised so highly that everyone else should be just like him. So his idea was that soon you just put enough Africans into, he said that, Africans into Europe, then nationalism would disappear and there would be no more wars. He falsely believed, mistakenly believed, naively believed that World War I, which had finished just a couple of years before 1920, he thought that was caused entirely by nationalism. And Kudahov-Kalergi thought he understood things, had been told he was so clever, yet was incredibly naive. He didn't know that in 1919, just 1 year previously, that the war had been finished. The Treaty of Versailles was signed by 120 bankers. He had no concept of the connection between bankers and warfare, how they organise the start of a war, they sustain it with finance, and then they decide, when their positions improve financially, when the war will stop. That's why the Treaty of Versailles was a completely financial agreement that crippled Germany. Now, Kudahov-Kalergi was unaware of all the financial aspects of warfare, and he thought it was just nationalism, which could be bred out of people by making everyone the same. There's a Kudahov-Kalergi Prize. Tony Blair's got it. A number of notable people that you think are on your side have received that prize, including one Bill Clinton, former US president. They got the Kalergi Prize too. Just 2 pages of Kalergi's books had him snapped up by Jewish financiers, Rothschilds, because in just 2 pages he said that he had decided, he married 2 Jewish women, he was extremely philo-Semitic and wrote rhapsodic descriptions of Jewish people being the intellectual aristocrats of the world. And by writing that in just 2 pages, he got jobs for life, chairing numerous institutions and think tanks, etc., all lavishly paid for by the Rothschilds. He certainly did a great trick there, writing just 2 pages of text. I can find a web page for you on that. Now, if you don't think Merkel, being Jewish, has anything to do with the problems of Europe today, think again. Did you know the European flag, which is a lovely blue flag and it's got 12 yellow stars on it, what do you think the 12 stars mean? I'll give you 26 guesses, but to save you the pain, I'll say it's the 12 tribes of Israel on top of Europe. Okay? 12 tribes of Israel is what the European blue flag means, on top of Europe. The flag was designed by a Jewish artist, and it's all based on the mythology that there were 12 tribes of Israel, when in fact there were never more than just 2. And the magic number 12, which is through folklore right through the centuries, through all the great legends and myths, gives rise to the concept of the magical 13th tribe that British aristocrats once hoped they could surely be, because they were so great they had the British Empire under their belt, you see. That was almost certainly due to Jewish infiltration of the British power pyramid. So Angela Merkel takes orders directly from George Soros, who's got $24 billion and literally controls the EU through Angela Merkel. She just says something, and because of the universality of rules in Europe, whatever she says goes for all 26 countries. That's why everyone has to get out before they lose their national armies, where their young men are actually enrolled in a foreign army to control their own population. For goodness sake, can you believe? The newspapers are helping to cover this up, for goodness sake. Lisa May's betrayal of the English people, I don't think that will hold out for very long. I don't think the Brexit thing will be forgotten so readily. Terrorism keeps bringing Brexit to the fore in people's minds, and the French newspapers' attempts to cover up terrorism in the guise of not glorifying it is just plain preposterous. I think people need to be. I think there's newsprint saleable in vast quantities in educating people about Islam. Because once you know the truth about Islam, the majority of modern-day Muslims walk away. They become apostates when they finally find out what their own religion is about. And it can be summarised in about 100 words in plain English, which will be of wonderful social value. And there is a notable politician from England, I can't remember his name, he's on American television for the presidential election spree. He's saying he can see Europe soon becoming another Beirut, a place of inter-suburban warfare. Okay, that's what he sees. I can't remember where the video was now. But he's warning America, don't fall in the trap of letting millions of Muslim migrants into America who don't want to assimilate. They just don't want to assimilate. A bunch of people who call 80% of their young men Muhammad and all their girls Aisha don't want to assimilate. They don't want foreign names. They even have the religious practice of naming their children. So, did you know that calling your boy Muhammad has been made illegal in Uzbekistan? And long beards are not allowed in Uzbekistan anymore. That's how seriously some governments are taking it today, and we need that right across the EU. But inter-suburban warfare, if you remember the Beirut civil war, which was an uncountable number of militias making war on each other, seemingly at the behest of Israel, Druze militia, Christian militia, Muslim militia, Hamas militia, all shooting up each other's suburbs in Beirut that went on for 25, 30 years. That's what this English politician says he fears for the near future of Europe. And it may go on for a lot more than 25 years. It could go on for centuries, okay? So we all have to wake up, and it starts with being educated about Islam. So the basic outline of Islam is what the Prophet said. I have been made victorious with terror. It's that simple. I have been made victorious with terror. So that's how he conquered Saudi Arabia, just decapitation, killing. It works, it's a good formula. And they think it works today. And I don't think it will. Because Islam falls to pieces under the slightest modest analysis. And I think they're very easily dealt with. Can I just say there's still growing traction in Australia for Pauline Hanson's advocacy of a Royal Commission to expose the true nature of Islam, whether it's really religion. Obviously it isn't. It's a terrorist manual, no more than that. And it's very easy to extract that from the Quran. You just need someone to teach you on YouTube. Look at a few websites, do a bit of reading, a bit of study, but just a bit of thinking about it. And you can soon figure out whether Muhammad even existed or whether it's something composed decades and centuries after his alleged death. But Pauline Hanson is pushing from down under, and if we can ever get the Royal Commission up, it could reverberate around the world as a standard approach to Islam, to know what it really is. Because at the moment, where everyone's floundering in ignorance, newspapers are providing no lead whatsoever as to the true nature of Islam, and that's a wonderful public service they could provide. And none of them have taken up the lead to do that. I'm sure you could sell a lot of newspapers explaining Islam, because I think people would like to know, as the death toll goes up, people would like to know the motivation behind all these things and the strict adherence of to the Quran of ISIS. They give assiduous theological explanations of why they do things, why they boil people to death, why they burn people alive, why they decapitate and crucify. It's straight out of the Quran in simple two-line verses, for goodness sake. So that's got to be put in newspapers. Whoever it offends is very useful because they probably leave Islam. And one final thought I'll say is that I think the ridiculous situation where Islamic war cry, Allah Akbar, has no connection to Islam, that line still repeated by newspapers is so long it's absolutely laughable and is worthy of great ridicule, which has got to happen shortly. I think Allah Akbar should be made illegal to be said in public. It can be said in prayers, but not in public. It should be equivalent to shouting fire in a theatre. Does that seem so unreasonable? Because normally these days it's one of the significant footprints of every massacre, every suicide bomb, every beheading, for goodness sake. So, Steve here in Sydney, and I'll leave you there.